The bitter November wind cut through my thin waitress uniform as I huddled near the service entrance of Nocturne, Chicago's most exclusive restaurant. My fingers trembled, partly from cold, partly from exhaustion. I'd been on my feet for 10 hours straight, picking up an extra shift because rent was due in 3 days, and I was still $200 short. Alina, break's over. The Sokolov party just arrived. Marcus, the floor manager, thrust his head through the doorway, his perpetually furrowed brow deepening when he saw me. Jesus, pull yourself together. These are important clients. I nodded, smoothing my black skirt and adjusting my collar. Important clients meant wealthy Russians, which meant the possibility of better tips if I could make them comfortable. It also meant I could finally put my linguistics degree to good use, even if it wasn't exactly the diplomatic career I'd once dreamed of. The main dining room hummed with quiet conversation and the delicate clink of crystal. Nocturne wasn't merely expensive. It was theatrical, with its soaring ceilings, midnight blue walls, and constellation of hanging lights that mimicked stars against an evening sky. It was a place I could never afford to dine in myself, yet I spent 5 nights a week serving those who could. I approached the private dining room, a secluded alcove separated from the main area by heavy velvet curtains. Before I could announce myself, I heard heated voices speaking rapid Russian. "This territory is non-negotiable, Dmitri." A male voice, low and controlled, but with an edge that made the hair on my arms stand up. "You have until the end of the month." I hesitated, hand frozen midair. The conversation wasn't meant for outsiders' ears. I could turn around, ask someone else to take the table, but then Marcus would question me, and I couldn't afford to lose this job. Drawing a deep breath, I knocked twice and parted the curtains with my practiced professional smile. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Nocturne." 7 men occupied the table, but my eyes were immediately drawn to him. He sat at the head of the table, a tumbler of amber liquid untouched before him. Unlike the others in their flashy suits and excessive jewelry, he wore a simple black ensemble that seemed to absorb the light around him. His jawline could cut glass, partially obscured by a neatly trimmed beard that didn't quite hide a thin scar running along his right cheek. But it was his eyes that held me, slate gray and utterly still, like the surface of a frozen lake. The man to his right, heavy-set with a gaudy gold watch, responded first. Finally. We'll start with the 82 Bordeaux." I nodded, writing it down. "Excellent choice." "Would you like to see our appetizer menu?" I asked in Russian, the language flowing naturally from my lips before I could think better of it. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Conversation ceased entirely. The man at the head of the table set down his untouched drink, his gaze now laser-focused on me. I felt naked, exposed, as if he could see through my skin to the rapid flutter of my pulse beneath. "Your Russian is excellent," he said in English, his accent barely perceptible. "Where did you learn to speak it so fluently?" I swallowed hard. Something in his tone suggested this wasn't casual curiosity. "I studied linguistics at Northwestern. Russian was my specialty." "Northwestern," he repeated, as if testing the word. "You're American-born?" "Yes. But my grandmother was from St. Petersburg. She taught me when I was young." He nodded once, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to the heavy-set man beside him and spoke in rapid Russian, too low for me to catch. The man looked surprised, then nodded and stood. "Bring me the wine list," the gray-eyed man said to me in English, dismissing the other men with a slight gesture. They filed out, leaving only him and a stone-faced man standing near the curtain, whom I hadn't noticed before. Security, obviously, from his stance, and the barely concealed bulge of a shoulder holster. I stood frozen, uncertain what had just happened or what protocol to follow. Marcus would kill me if I'd somehow offended our VIP guests. "The wine list," he repeated, his voice softer now, almost gentle, though his eyes remained calculating. "Right away, sir." I turned to leave, my heart hammering in my chest. "What's your name?" he asked before I could escape. "Alina. Alina Foster." "Alina," he repeated, as if memorizing it. "I'm Victor Sokolov." My stomach dropped. Everyone in Chicago's service industry knew that name, whispered it with a mixture of fear and awe. Viktor Sokolov, the Russian businessman whose legitimate enterprises, nightclubs, real estate developments, import businesses, were rumored to be fronts for something much darker. I'd served wealthy men before, powerful men, but never someone who carried the weight of so many whispered warnings. Bring the wine list to my office upstairs, Alina Foster, room 301. It wasn't a request. I nodded and backed out through the curtains, my legs trembling beneath me. The restaurant occupied the ground floor of a renovated historical building. The upper floors were private offices, including, apparently, one belonging to Sokolov. Marcus intercepted me immediately. What the hell happened? The whole party just left except for Sokolov. I don't know. He asked for the wine list in his office, room 301. Marcus's face drained of color. You spoke Russian to him, didn't you? He hissed. I told you never to show off to the clients. I wasn't showing off. It's just habit when I hear, never mind. Give me the wine list. I'll take it up myself. But before he could grab it from my hands, the stone-faced security man appeared at my elbow. Mr. Sokolov specified the waitress should bring it, he said flatly. Marcus looked like he might protest, then seemed to think better of it. He thrust the leather-bound wine list into my hands. Don't screw this up, he muttered. The security man gestured toward the staff elevator. I followed him, clutching the wine list like a shield. As the elevator doors closed, encasing me in the small space with this hulking, silent man, I realized I might have made a terrible mistake. Is Mr. Sokolov upset with the service? I ventured. The man didn't even glance at me. Mr. Sokolov doesn't get upset. He gets even. My mouth went dry. What had I done to offend him? Was speaking Russian some kind of territorial offense? Or had I overheard something in that brief exchange that I shouldn't have? The elevator opened directly into a plush waiting area. The security man guided me down a hallway to a heavy wooden door with the number 301 etched in gold. He knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response, gesturing for me to enter. I stepped into what could only be described as a power office, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. A massive desk dominated one end, while a seating area with leather couches occupied the other. The walls were lined with books in multiple languages and what appeared to be authentic Russian art. Viktor Sokolov stood with his back to me, gazing out at the city lights. He'd removed his jacket, and his white shirt stretched across broad shoulders, the fabric so fine it seemed to shimmer in the dim light. The wine list, sir, I said, hating how my voice quavered. He turned, and I realized why he'd dismissed his associates. His carefully controlled expression had slipped, revealing something raw and dangerous. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, taking the wine list from my hands and setting it aside without a glance. Do you know who I am, Alina Foster? He asked quietly. I nodded, unable to form words as he circled me slowly, like a predator assessing its prey. Then you understand that I don't believe in coincidences. He stopped directly in front of me. A woman who speaks flawless Russian appears at my private dinner, the same dinner where I'm discussing matters of considerable sensitivity. I'm just a waitress, I whispered. I've worked at Nocturne for 8 months. You can check with... I already have. While you were coming up in the elevator, he nodded toward a laptop on his desk, where I glimpsed what looked like my employee file. Northwestern University, graduated with honors in linguistics, specializing in Slavic languages, minor in international relations. Yet here you are, serving overpriced wine to men like me. Heat crawled up my neck. The economy isn't kind to liberal arts majors. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, transforming his face so completely that for a moment I forgot to be afraid. No, it isn't, but still, an interesting career path. It pays the rent. Most months, anyway. He studied me for another long moment. I fought the urge to fidget under his scrutiny, to explain that my student loans had crushed my dreams of graduate school, that my grandmother's medical bills had drained what little savings I'd managed to accumulate. But something told me Viktor Sokolov wasn't interested in my financial hardships. Your accent, he said finally. Northern region, but with certain inflections I can't quite place. My grandmother was from St. Petersburg, but she lived in Moscow for many years before emigrating. I probably picked up a mixture. He nodded, as if I'd confirmed something. And do you often translate for interested parties? The question carried a weight I didn't understand. I'm not a professional translator, if that's what you're asking. That's not what I'm asking. His voice hardened. Let me be direct. The FBI and CIA both actively recruit linguistics graduates, particularly those specializing in Russian. Have you had any contact with either agency? My blood turned to ice. No, I'm not. I wouldn't. I stopped, took a breath. I'm not working for anyone but Nocturne, Mr. Sokolov. He watched me closely, searching for deception. A pretty girl with your skills could find more lucrative employment than waiting tables. Not without connections, I said, more bitterly than I intended. Something shifted in his expression. Interest, perhaps, or calculation. He moved toward his desk, pressing a button on his phone. Bring tea, he instructed, then gestured to one of the leather chairs opposite his desk. Sit. It wasn't an invitation. I perched on the edge of the seat, hyper-aware of my waitress uniform, the small stain on the sleeve from a spilled soup appetizer, the runs in my stockings carefully hidden beneath knee-high boots I'd bought secondhand. He sat across from me, leaning back in his chair with casual authority. You heard something in that room downstairs. Something in Russian. I hesitated. Denying it would be pointless. He'd seen my reaction. Just a few sentences. Something about territory being non-negotiable. His jaw tightened. And what did you make of that? Nothing, I said honestly. I assume you're in real estate. He laughed then. The sound so unexpected it startled me. Real estate. Yes, you could say that. A knock at the door interrupted us. The security man entered with a silver tea service, setting it on the desk before withdrawing silently. Victor poured 2 cups, adding a spoonful of jam, not sugar, to one before sliding it toward me. Russian style, he explained. My mother's recipe. I accepted the cup, the warmth seeping into my cold fingers. The tea was strong and fragrant, the sweet tartness of the jam balancing the bitterness. It reminded me of my grandmother's kitchen, of stories told in hushed Russian while she taught me to make pelmeni at her worn wooden table. Thank you, I murmured, surprised by the unexpected hospitality. Victor sipped his tea, watching me over the rim of his cup. You're in debt, he stated flatly. I nearly choked. Excuse me? Student loans. Medical bills for your grandmother. Cancer, yes? And your apartment in Wicker Park isn't cheap, even with 2 roommates. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the November cold outside. How could you possibly know that? He didn't answer directly. I have a proposition for you, Alina Foster. I'm not interested in... Don't insult me by assuming you know what I'm offering. His voice remained calm, but his eyes flashed with something dangerous. I need someone with your skills. Someone who can translate documents, attend meetings as my interpreter. Someone who understands both cultures and can move between them seamlessly. I blinked, trying to process what he was saying. You want to hire me as a translator? As my personal assistant. The position includes a generous salary, benefits, and an apartment in my building on Lakeshore Drive. He named a figure that made me dizzy. 5 times what I made at Nocturne. Your grandmother's medical care would also be covered. I have connections with specialists at Northwestern Memorial. It was too perfect, too precisely tailored to my desperate situation. Why me? You must have dozens of qualified translators at your disposal. I don't trust easily, Alina, but I trust what I can see with my own eyes. And what I see is someone intelligent, someone who needs a lifeline, and someone who now knows enough about my business that leaving you serving drinks to my competitors would be imprudent. The threat was velvet-wrapped, but unmistakable. I set down my teacup with trembling fingers. So it's not really a choice. His expression softened fractionally. We always have choices. Yours is between continuing to struggle, drowning in debt while your grandmother's condition deteriorates, or accepting my offer and changing both your lives overnight. And if I say no, then you walk out of here and return to your life. But you'll be watched, carefully. And if I discover any connection between you and law enforcement, past, present, or future, our next conversation won't be over tea. I should have been terrified. I should have run from that office, reported the implied threat to someone. But as I looked at Victor Sokolov, at the empire he'd built, at the power he wielded with such casual confidence. I felt something unexpected stir within me, not just fear, but fascination, and beneath it all, a whisper of opportunity I'd thought forever beyond my reach. When would I start? I heard myself ask. Victor's lips curved into a smile that transformed his harsh features. It was the smile of a man who rarely lost. Immediately. In fact, he checked his watch, an elegant timepiece that probably cost more than my annual salary. I don't think you'll be returning to Nocturne at all. But my shift, I can't just disappear. I need to give notice, collect my things from my apartment. All taken care of. Your manager has been informed that you've been hired away. As for your apartment, he pressed a button on his phone again. Alexei will escort you there now to collect whatever you need for tonight. Tomorrow we'll arrange for the rest. The security man, Alexei, appeared in the doorway as if he'd been waiting just outside. Victor rose, extending his hand across the desk. Do we have an agreement, Alina? I stood on shaky legs and placed my hand in his. His skin was warm, his grip firm but not crushing. Yes, I said, sealing my fate with a single word. We have an agreement. As I followed Alexei out, I glanced back one last time. Victor had returned to the window, silhouetted against the glittering Chicago skyline that seemed to bend to his will. In that moment, I understood that I had made a choice that would irreversibly alter the course of my life. I had stepped willingly into the orbit of a dangerous man, drawn by desperation and something else I couldn't yet name, something that both terrified and thrilled me. And as the heavy door closed behind me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just traded one form of captivity for another. Only time would tell whether my golden cage would prove to be my salvation or my ruin. The ride to my apartment was silent and tense. Alexei drove a sleek black Escalade with tinted windows so dark they were nearly opaque, navigating through Chicago's nighttime traffic with practiced ease. I sat in the back, my mind racing. Had I really just quit my job and agreed to work for a man who was almost certainly involved in organized crime? What would my grandmother say if she knew? My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my roommate, Zoe. Where are you? Marcus is freaking out. I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. How could I explain what had just happened when I barely understood it myself? Got a new job, coming to get some things. We'll explain later. I typed back, knowing it was woefully inadequate. Alexei parked in front of my building, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and perpetually broken elevators. He followed me silently up 3 flights of stairs, maintaining a respectful distance, but making it clear I wasn't going anywhere without him. You don't have to come inside, I said as I fumbled for my keys. I'll just be a few minutes. His expression didn't change. Mr. Sokolov's instructions were specific. I stay with you. I pushed open the door to find Zoe and our other roommate, Tasha, sitting at our tiny kitchen table, both looking up in surprise. Alina, what the hell? Marcus called saying you abandoned your shift and... Zoe's words died in her throat as she caught sight of Alexei looming in the doorway. Who's that? This is... my new employer's colleague. The words sounded ridiculous even to my own ears. I need to pack some things. I'll be staying somewhere else for a while. Tasha stood, her arms crossed protectively. Are you in some kind of trouble? No, nothing like that. It's a great opportunity. A private translation job. I moved toward my bedroom, avoiding their concerned gazes. I'll call you tomorrow and explain everything. My room was barely large enough for a double bed and a dresser, but it had been my sanctuary for the past 2 years. I grabbed my largest duffel bag and began stuffing it with essentials. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the dog-eared Russian novels my grandmother had given me, the framed photo of her holding me at graduation. I changed quickly out of my waitress uniform into jeans and a sweater, suddenly desperate to shed any connection to Nocturne. As I packed, reality began to sink in. I was leaving everything familiar to work for a man I'd just met. A man who had effortlessly discovered my financial situation, my grandmother's illness, my address. A man who had implied, quite clearly, that refusing him wasn't really an option. Yet beneath the fear lurked a traitorous whisper of excitement. For months I'd been drowning, watching my dreams recede further with each bill that arrived. Now, suddenly, I had been plucked from that slow demise and dropped into, what? Danger, certainly, but also possibility. Alina. Zoe appeared in my doorway, keeping her voice low. What's really going on? Who is this guy? I zipped my bag closed. His name is Viktor Sokolov. He needs a Russian translator and assistant. Her eyes widened. Sokolov? The nightclub owner? The one they say is connected to... I know who they say he is. I cut her off, glancing nervously toward the living room where Alexei waited. But the pay is incredible, Zoe, and he's offering to help with Grandma's medical bills. That doesn't sound suspicious to you? Zoe hissed. No one offers something like that without expecting something in return. He expects me to work for him, to translate, to assist with his business. His business, she repeated skeptically. And what exactly does that involve? I shouldered my bag. I don't know yet, but it has to be better than watching Grandma waste away because we can't afford better care. Zoe grabbed my arm. At least tell me where you're going, and promise you'll call tomorrow. Lakeshore Drive, some building he owns. And yes, I promise. She released me reluctantly. Be careful, Alina. Men like that. They think they own everything they touch. Her words followed me as Alexei escorted me back to the waiting SUV, my hastily packed bag slung over my shoulder. The Chicago night had turned colder, and a light snow was beginning to fall, melting as it hit the pavement. The drive to Lakeshore Drive took 20 minutes. We pulled up to a sleek high-rise overlooking the lake, its glass and steel facade glittering against the night sky. A uniformed doorman rushed forward with an umbrella as Alexei opened my door. Ms. Foster, the doorman greeted me, as if he'd been expecting me all evening. Welcome to the Sovereign. Mr. Sokolov asked me to show you to your apartment. Thank you, I managed, following him into a lobby more suited to a luxury hotel than an apartment building. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a bubbling fountain in the center. It was a world away from my drafty warehouse conversion. The elevator required a key card to access the upper floors. The doorman swiped his, pressing the button for the 32nd floor. Mr. Sokolov occupies the penthouse on 40, he informed me, as if sharing a valuable secret. But he thought you might prefer something a bit more intimate. The elevator doors opened directly into a foyer. The doorman handed me a key card and a small envelope. Your keys and some welcome information. If you need anything at all, the concierge desk is staffed 24 hours. I thanked him, waiting until he disappeared back into the elevator before exploring my new... home? Prison? I wasn't sure which term applied. The apartment was stunning. A corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Chicago's glittering skyline and the dark expanse of Lake Michigan beyond. The furnishings were sleek and modern, in shades of cream and pale blue. A fully equipped kitchen gleamed with stainless steel appliances I'd never use. I could barely cook ramen without burning it. The living room featured a massive television and plush sofa, a small dining area, a study with empty bookshelves waiting to be filled. And through a set of double doors, a master bedroom with the largest bed I'd ever seen, draped in what looked like impossibly expensive linens. The attached bathroom had a rainfall shower and a deep soaking tub that made me want to weep with longing. My apartment had only a cramped stall shower with perpetually lukewarm water. On the bed lay a large white box tied with a black silk ribbon. I approached it cautiously, as if it might contain something dangerous. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a silk nightgown in deep burgundy with a matching robe. Both were obviously expensive, both were exactly my size, and both made my face burn with implications I wasn't ready to contemplate. Beneath them was a handwritten note on heavy cream stationery, for your comfort. We begin tomorrow, 8 a.m. V. I closed the box quickly, pushing it to the far side of the bed. Whatever Viktor Sokolov might expect from me, that was a boundary I wasn't willing to cross. I'd agreed to be his assistant, not his plaything. Still, as I unpacked my meager belongings, my faded jeans looking shabby against the pristine closet, my worn paperbacks dwarfed by the empty bookshelves, I couldn't help but feel that I'd stepped into a world where the usual rules no longer applied. a world where men like Viktor Sokolov took what they wanted, regardless of boundaries or consent. I took a long shower, letting the hot water, actually hot for once, ease the tension from my muscles. I dressed in my own pajamas, a threadbare Northwestern t-shirt and flannel pants, a small act of defiance against the silk lingerie still in its box. Sleep seemed impossible, but exhaustion eventually won out. I drifted off to the unfamiliar sounds of the luxury building, the distant hum of the heating system, the occasional ping of the elevator, the muffled voices of wealthy neighbors returning from late dinners or theater outings. So different from my apartment, with its shouting neighbors and perpetually barking dog and garbage trucks at 4 a.m., I awoke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to cover and the disorienting sensation of not knowing where I was. For a moment, I thought I was back in my childhood bedroom. Then reality crashed down, and I remembered. Viktor Sokolov. The offer I couldn't refuse, the apartment that wasn't really mine. My phone showed 7:15 a.m. and 3 missed calls from Zoe. I'd call her back later, when I had something concrete to tell her. First, I needed coffee and time to prepare myself for whatever the day might bring. The kitchen, I discovered, was fully stocked. Premium coffee beans, organic milk, fresh fruit, pastries that looked like they'd come from a high-end bakery. I brewed a pot of coffee stronger than I usually made it, needing the extra caffeine to sharpen my wits. At 7:55, as I was deliberating over what to wear, how did one dress for a first day as a Russian mobster's assistant, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Good morning, Ms. Foster," a crisp, professional female voice. "This is Irina, Mr. Sokolov's executive manager. A car is waiting for you downstairs. Mr. Sokolov is expecting you at his private residence." His residence? I'd assumed we'd be meeting at an office. "I'll be right down." I opted for the most professional outfit I'd brought. Black pants, a gray sweater, and ankle boots. My one concession to style was a vintage silk scarf, a gift from my grandmother, which I knotted at my neck, a touch of mascara, a swipe of tinted lip balm, and my hair pulled back into a neat bun, completed what I hoped was a competent, forgettable look. The same black Escalade waited outside, but this time a different man held the door, younger than Alexei, with close-cropped blonde hair and a scar above his left eyebrow. He nodded respectfully as I approached. "Ms. Foster, I'm Mikhail." "Nice to meet you." I slipped into the back seat, mentally cataloging another member of Viktor's security detail. How many men did he have, and were they all former military as their posture and alertness suggested? We drove north along Lakeshore Drive, eventually turning onto a private road that wound through an exclusive enclave of mansions set well back from the street. Mikhail stopped at a gate, pressed his thumb to a biometric scanner, and waited as it swung open silently. Viktor's home was a modernist masterpiece of glass and stone, perched on a bluff overlooking the lake. A series of geometric volumes stacked like a sophisticated puzzle, it managed to be both imposing and somehow organic, as if it had grown naturally from the rocky shoreline. Mikhail escorted me to a massive front door that swung open before we reached it. A slender woman in her 50s, with ash-blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, greeted us in the soaring entry hall. "Ms. Foster, I'm Irina Petrova." Her accent was pure Moscow, her handshake brisk and efficient. "Mr. Sokolov is in his study. Follow me, please." I trailed behind her through the house, trying not to gawk at my surroundings. The interior was minimalist, but clearly expensive, with museum-quality art on the walls and furnishings that looked both beautiful and uncomfortable. We passed several security men stationed throughout the house, each nodding respectfully to Irina as we passed. She stopped before a set of double doors, knocking once before opening them. "Ms. Foster is here, sir." Viktor Sokolov stood beside a wall of windows overlooking Lake Michigan, silhouetted against the morning light. Unlike the previous night, when he'd been dressed for business in his perfect black suit, today he wore dark jeans and a charcoal cashmere sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "Alina, welcome." He turned, gesturing toward a seating area with 2 leather chairs facing each other across a chess table. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you." The lie came easily. "The apartment is very nice." "I'm glad you approve." He smiled slightly, as if he knew exactly how overwhelmed I'd been. "Please sit. Coffee? I nodded, perching on the edge of one of the chairs. Irina appeared with a silver tray bearing an ornate samovar and delicate porcelain cups. "That will be all for now, Irina," Victor said, dismissing her with a nod. When the door closed behind her, he turned his full attention to me. "I imagine you have questions." I accepted the coffee he offered, buying time by taking a small sip. It was perfect, strong and smooth, with a hint of cardamom. "Several, actually, starting with what exactly you expect me to do." "Direct." "I appreciate that." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Your official title is Personal Assistant and Cultural Liaison. You'll manage my schedule, translate documents, accompany me to meetings with Russian clients, and ensure nothing is lost in translation, linguistically or culturally." And unofficially, a flicker of approval crossed his face. "Unofficially, you're my eyes and ears in situations where a man in my position might miss subtle cues. You'll observe who speaks to whom, who avoids certain topics, who seems uncomfortable with particular questions. You want me to spy on your business associates. I want you to help me understand the people I deal with." He set down his cup. "I'm not asking you to do anything illegal, Alina. I'm asking you to be observant." I doubted that distinction would matter much to the kind of people Viktor Sokolov did business with, but I nodded anyway. "And my grandmother's medical care?" "Already arranged." He reached for a folder on a side table, sliding it across to me. "I've scheduled a consultation for her next week with Dr. Abramson at Northwestern Memorial. He's the best oncologist in the Midwest." I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were detailed medical records. My grandmother's entire history with stage 3 ovarian cancer, including treatments attempted and failed. Records I knew for a fact were protected by privacy laws. "How did you get these?" I whispered. Victor shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. "Money opens most doors, Alina. Information is just another commodity." I should have been outraged at the invasion of privacy. Instead, I felt a surge of desperate hope. Can he help her, this doctor? He has access to experimental treatments not yet available to the general public. And unlike your grandmother's current doctors, he doesn't make decisions based on insurance limitations. I closed the folder carefully, fighting back tears. "Thank you." Victor watched me, his gray eyes unreadable. "Your loyalty to your family is admirable. It's a quality I value highly." Something in his tone made me look up. There was an intensity to his gaze that hadn't been there before, an almost predatory focus that made my pulse quicken. "I should warn you, Alina, I'm not an easy man to work for. I demand perfection, absolute loyalty, complete discretion." He leaned forward slightly. "In return, I'm generous with those who prove themselves valuable. But I do not tolerate betrayal." The threat was clear, but it was more than that. There was something almost possessive in the way he looked at me, as if he'd already categorized me as belonging to him in some fundamental way. "I understand," I said, though I wasn't sure I did, not fully. "Do you?" He stood abruptly, moving to his desk and retrieving another folder. "Your background check was comprehensive, but there are gaps. 6 months last year where you seem to have disappeared. No employment records, no rental agreement, no credit card usage." I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. "You investigated me. Of course I did. I don't invite strangers into my home, into my business, without knowing exactly who they are." His voice hardened. "Where were you during those 6 months, Alina?" The room suddenly felt too warm, too close. I set down my cup carefully. "I was with my grandmother in Philadelphia. After her diagnosis. I stayed in her apartment, used cash from my savings. There's no mystery." He studied me for a long moment, as if weighing the truth of my words. "And the man you were seeing before that? James Mercer?" My blood ran cold. James was a part of my life I'd tried very hard to forget. "That ended over a year ago. It's not relevant to anything. Everything about you is relevant to me now." Victor returned to his chair, his movements fluid and controlled. "Mercer works for the Chicago Tribune. Crime Beat, specializing in organized crime investigations. I'm aware of what he does. My voice came out sharper than I intended. We dated briefly. It didn't work out. End of story. Is it? Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. He's been investigating my business interests for months. And now, suddenly, his ex-girlfriend appears in my restaurant, speaking flawless Russian, conveniently needing employment. The implication hit me like a physical blow. You think I'm working with him? Spying for him? I stood, anger temporarily overriding caution. I haven't spoken to James in months. Our breakup wasn't amicable. I would never... Sit down, Alina. Victor's voice was soft, but the command was unmistakable. I sank back into my chair, heart racing. I believe you, he said after a moment, but understand my position. Trust must be earned, and until it is, you will be watched. Your communications monitored, your movements tracked. You can't do that. But even as I protested, I knew he could, and would. I can. I am. He leaned forward, his gaze holding mine. Consider it a probationary period. Prove your loyalty, and you'll find I can be very generous, very protective of what's mine. What's mine? The possessive phrasing sent a shiver down my spine, part fear, part something else I didn't want to examine too closely. I'm not yours, I said quietly. I'm your employee. A smile curved his lips, not reaching his eyes. For now. Before I could respond to that loaded statement, the study door opened and Irina appeared, her expression apologetic. Mr. Sokolov, Mr. Petrov has arrived for your 9:30 meeting. Victor nodded, straightening. Show him to the conference room. I'll join you shortly. He turned back to me as Irina withdrew. Your first official duty. Mr. Petrov speaks very little English, and I need to ensure nothing is lost in translation. I stood, grateful for the interruption and the chance to regain my composure. Of course. As I followed Victor from the study, I couldn't shake his words from my mind, very protective of what's mine. For now, the implications hung in the air between us, unspoken but unmistakable. I had agreed to work for Victor Sokolov out of desperation, seeing only the lifeline he offered for my grandmother. I hadn't considered that he might want more than my linguistic skills, that the golden cage he'd built might be designed to hold more than just a translator. And as we entered the conference room, where a heavy-set man with a florid face stood waiting, I realized with growing unease that I had walked willingly into the orbit of a man who took what he wanted, and who, for reasons I didn't yet understand, had decided that he wanted me. Mr. Petrov proved to be a challenging first assignment. He spoke a regional dialect of Russian filled with slang and obscure idioms, and he talked rapidly, often slurring words together. But years of practice with my grandmother's friends had prepared me well. I kept pace, translating his rapid-fire negotiation with Victor about import licenses and shipping routes, with only occasional pauses to clarify a term. The meeting lasted 2 hours, during which I noticed Victor watching me as much as he watched Petrov, evaluating me, testing me. When Petrov used a particularly vulgar expression to describe a business rival, I translated it accurately but professionally, maintaining the meaning without the crude language. Victor's lips twitched in what might have been approval. When Petrov finally left, escorted out by Mikhail, Victor turned to me. You did well. Most translators would have softened his more colorful expressions. You said you wanted accurate translations. Nothing lost. Indeed. He checked his watch. We have another meeting at 1, a business lunch with American investors. You won't need to translate, but I want you to observe. The lunch meeting took place at an exclusive club overlooking Millennium Park. I sat slightly behind Victor at a table filled with middle-aged men in expensive suits, taking notes and observing as instructed. They discussed a real estate development, a luxury hotel and shopping complex, with such casual mention of 8-figure sums that it made my student loan debt seem laughably insignificant by comparison. What struck me most was the deference they showed Victor. These were clearly powerful men in their own right. CEOs, hedge fund managers, real estate moguls. Yet they yielded to him in subtle ways. They waited for him to speak before offering opinions. They sought his approval with small glances. They laughed too readily at his rare attempts at humor. They feared him, I realized. Not overtly, but in the way prey animals instinctively fear predators. A bone-deep recognition of danger barely concealed beneath a civilized veneer. After lunch, we returned to Victor's mansion. He disappeared into his study with Irina, leaving me to wait in a sunlit sitting room with a view of the lake. An hour passed, then another. I was beginning to wonder if I'd been forgotten when Irina appeared. Mr. Sokolov would like you to join him for dinner, she announced. There are suitable clothes in your apartment. Mikhail will take you there and bring you back at 7. I can just wear what I have on, I began. But Irina's expression made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. 7 o'clock, she repeated. Don't be late. Back at the apartment, I found not one but several garment bags hanging in the closet, none of which had been there that morning. Each contained an evening outfit, complete with accessories, all in my size, all from designers I'd only read about in magazines. The least revealing was a black dress with a high neck and long sleeves, fitted but not inappropriately so. I chose that one, along with the simple pearl earrings that accompanied it. As I dressed, I couldn't help but wonder about the other women who must have come before me. Had they lived in this apartment too? Worn clothes Victor selected? Sat across from him at dinner, wondering about his intentions? The thought made my stomach twist with something that felt uncomfortably like jealousy. Mikhail arrived precisely at 6:45, his expression betraying nothing when I emerged in the black dress. The drive back to Victor's mansion was silent, but I felt a growing tension coiling within me. This was more than a business dinner, we both knew it. Victor waited in the foyer when I arrived, dressed now in a tailored suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean waist. His eyes swept over me, lingering just long enough to make heat rise to my cheeks. The dress suits you, he said simply, offering his arm. I thought we might eat on the terrace. The weather has cleared, and the view of the lake is exceptional at sunset. The terrace was actually a rooftop garden, accessible by a private elevator from the master suite. Despite the November chill, it was comfortably warm thanks to discreetly placed heaters. A table had been set for 2, with candles flickering in hurricane lamps, and a bottle of wine already breathing. This is not what I expected, I admitted as he held my chair. What did you expect? Victor poured wine into delicate crystal glasses. I don't know. Something less. I gestured at the intimate table setting, the candlelight, the rose petals scattered among the hurricane lamps. Less romantic. He smiled slightly, taking his seat across from me. Is it so strange that I might enjoy beautiful things in beautiful settings? Before I could respond, a server appeared with the first course. A delicate beet salad with goat cheese and candied walnuts. It was followed by a parade of exquisite dishes, seared scallops, rack of lamb, a chocolate soufflé that melted on my tongue. Throughout the meal, Victor asked questions about my childhood, my studies, my interests, all while skillfully evading questions about his own past. You're very good at that, I observed as we finished dessert. At what? Learning everything about me while revealing nothing about yourself. He smiled, swirling the last of his wine. An occupational hazard. In my position, privacy is more than a preference. It's a survival tactic. Yet you've invaded my privacy completely. I didn't mean to sound bitter, but the wine had loosened my tongue. My medical records, my financial situation, my ex-boyfriend. A necessary precaution. His expression hardened slightly. I don't apologize for protecting myself and my interests. And am I one of your interests now? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Victor set down his glass, his gray eyes suddenly intense in the candlelight. Yes, he said simply. You are. The directness of his answer left me momentarily speechless. I had expected evasion, perhaps even denial, not this stark confirmation. Why? I finally managed. He considered me for a long moment. You remind me of someone I once knew. Someone who spoke her mind regardless of consequences. Someone who didn't cower, his lips curved in a half-smile. It's refreshing in a world where most people are too afraid to meet my eyes. I'm not afraid of you. The lie tumbled out easily. No? He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. You should be. A shiver ran through me that had nothing to do with the evening air. Is that a threat? A fact. Victor stood, moving to the edge of the terrace where the Chicago skyline glittered against the night. I've done things that would terrify you, Alina. I've built my empire on the backs of those who underestimated me, who thought they could take what was mine. I rose, drawn to him despite my better judgment. And what exactly is yours, Victor? He turned, his expression almost predatory in the shadows. Everything you see. His gaze swept over the city spread out beneath us. And now, you, my breath caught. I told you before, I'm not yours. I'm your employee. For now. He repeated his earlier statement, moving closer until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. But I see the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. The way your pulse jumps when I enter a room. He reached out, his fingertips grazing my neck where my carotid betrayed me with its rapid beating. Your body speaks truths your words deny. I should have stepped back, should have maintained professional distance. Instead, I stood frozen, caught in the magnetic pull of his presence. What happened to the woman I remind you of? I asked quietly. Pain flashed briefly across his features, gone so quickly I might have imagined it. She died. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. He withdrew his hand, and I felt its absence like a physical loss. My sister was always braver than she should have been, always speaking truth to power, regardless of consequence. Something dark passed behind his eyes. The world punishes that kind of courage. The admission stunned me. It was the first personal detail he'd shared, a tiny crack in his impenetrable armor. Is that why you surround yourself with people who fear you? So no one speaks truth to your power? His expression sharpened. Careful, Alina. You said you valued my directness. Did you mean only when it's convenient? For a moment, I thought I'd gone too far. Something dangerous flickered in his gaze, and I remembered suddenly who he was, what he was capable of. But then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his harsh features, making him look younger, almost carefree. You really aren't afraid of me, he said, sounding both surprised and pleased. How refreshing. Before I could respond, his phone vibrated in his pocket. He checked it, his expression immediately shuddering. Excuse me, I need to take this. He stepped away, speaking rapid Russian into the phone, his voice too low for me to catch more than fragments. Something about a shipment, unexpected complications, security concerns. His posture had tensed. The brief moment of openness completely vanished. When he returned, his face was carefully blank. I apologize, but I need to cut our evening short. Mikhail will take you back to your apartment. Is everything all right? I asked, though I knew he wouldn't tell me if it wasn't just business. He escorted me to the elevator, his hand resting lightly on the small of my back. In the confined space, his cologne, sandalwood and something darker, more primal, enveloped me. Tomorrow, 8 o'clock, Irina will brief you on the week's schedule. The doors opened, and Mikhail was already waiting in the foyer, car keys in hand. Victor's fingers lingered on my back, a gentle pressure that nonetheless sent heat spreading through my body. Good night, Alina, he murmured, his lips close enough to my ear that I could feel his breath. Sweet dreams. The drive back to my apartment passed in a blur. My mind replayed every moment of the evening, every touch, every loaded glance. I was attracted to him. I couldn't deny it any longer. Attracted to a man who was dangerous, powerful, possibly criminal. A man who had all but stated his intention to possess me. What kind of woman did that make me? Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, my thoughts chasing each other in endless circles. Just before dawn, I gave up and called my grandmother. Despite the early hour, she answered on the second ring. Alinachka, she greeted me in Russian, her voice warm despite the weakness underlying it. I was just thinking about you. I miss you, babushka. I curled around my phone like a lifeline to sanity. How are you feeling? The same. But never mind that. Tell me about this new job of yours. So mysterious. Your message said only that you're working as a translator now? I hesitated. How much should I tell her? Nothing that would worry her, certainly. Yes, for a Russian businessman. It's a good opportunity. Russian? Is he handsome, this businessman? I laughed despite myself. Ever since my breakup with James, she'd been not so subtly pushing me to date again. Babushka, please. It's not like that. If you say so. I could hear the smile in her voice. But you know what they say. Russian men make passionate lovers but terrible husbands. I'll keep that in mind, I said dryly. Listen, something else good has happened. I've arranged for you to see a specialist at Northwestern Memorial, Dr. Abramson. He's supposed to be the best, and he has access to treatments your current doctor doesn't. Silence greeted this announcement. Then, cautiously, Alinochka, how can you afford such a doctor, even with insurance? My new employer offers excellent benefits. The lie came easily. Please don't worry about the cost. Just focus on getting better. More silence. Then, in Russian, this man you work for, what is his name? I should have anticipated the question. My grandmother had lived through the Soviet era. She understood power structures, knew how to read between lines. Viktor Sokolov, I admitted finally. Her sharp intake of breath was audible even through the phone. Sokolov, she repeated, switching to Russian, the one they call the Wolf of Chicago. You know of him? I sat up straighter. Not personally, but his reputation, it reaches even to the old Russian community here. Her voice lowered. They say he controls half the city, that nothing moves through Chicago without his permission. Those are just rumors, I said, without conviction. Perhaps, she paused. But be careful, my Alinochka. Men like that. They take what they want and leave destruction in their wake. Almost exactly what Zoe had said. Was I the only one who couldn't see the danger clearly? I'll be careful, I promised. I should go. I have to be at work soon. I love you, Babushka. I love you too, my heart. Call again soon. I hung up, my grandmother's warning echoing in my mind as I prepared for my second day as Viktor Sokolov's assistant. The Wolf of Chicago. The nickname suited him. Predatory, territorial, dangerous when cornered. Mikhail picked me up at precisely 7:30, his taciturn presence now almost familiar. This time, we drove not to Victor's mansion, but to a nondescript building in the West Loop. Unlike his home, this building had multiple layers of security. A gated parking garage with armed guards, biometric scanners at every door, cameras covering every angle. What is this place? I asked, as Mikhail escorted me through a maze of corridors. Mr. Sokolov's primary office. He offered nothing more. We finally reached a large open workspace with perhaps a dozen people, all busy at computers or on phones. To one side was a glass-walled conference room where Victor sat with Irina and several men in suits, studying documents spread across the table. Irina spotted me and hurried over. Good, you're here. Mr. Sokolov has a delegation arriving from Moscow at 11. They'll be expecting traditional hospitality. I've prepared briefing materials for you. She handed me a thick folder. Memorize these profiles before they arrive. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of preparation. I studied the profiles of 6 Russian businessmen, committed their preferences to memory, everything from favorite drinks to personal feuds, and helped arrange a traditional Russian lunch spread. When the delegation finally arrived, I greeted each man by name in Russian, mentioning personal details that clearly pleased them. Throughout the lunch meeting, I translated seamlessly, keeping pace with technical discussions about shipping routes and import regulations. Occasionally, I caught Victor watching me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret, something between approval and possessiveness. After the Russians left, Victor beckoned me into his private office, a space as minimalist and imposing as his home study. You impressed our guests, he said, gesturing for me to sit. Fedorov particularly mentioned your knowledge of his hometown. Thank you. I took the offered seat, acutely aware of being alone with him again. The briefing materials were thorough. I require thoroughness in all things. His gaze lingered on me, making the double meaning clear, which is why I have another task for you. He slid a folder across his desk. Inside was a dossier on James Mercer, my ex-boyfriend. Photos of him entering and leaving his apartment, transcripts of phone calls, copies of recent articles he'd written. What is this? I asked, though it was obvious. Your former lover has become problematic. His latest investigation focuses on my shipping operations. I need to know what he knows. I closed the folder, pushing it back toward him. I told you. I haven't spoken to James in months. We didn't exactly part on good terms. Precisely why he won't suspect your motives if you reconnect. Victor leaned forward, his expression hardening. Call him. Suggest drinks. Reminisce about old times. Find out what he's working on. You want me to spy on him? My voice was flat. To betray his trust. I want you to protect my interests. And by extension, your own. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. Your grandmother's appointment with Dr. Abramson is tomorrow. It would be unfortunate if complications arose. The threat was veiled but unmistakable. My blood ran cold. You wouldn't. I would do whatever necessary to protect what's mine. He held my gaze unflinching. Make the call, Alina. In that moment, I hated him, hated the power he held over me, hated my own weakness in bending to it. But more than that, I hated that even now, with him threatening my grandmother's care, I still felt that treacherous pull of attraction. Fine, I said through clenched teeth. I'll call him. Victor smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. Excellent. Arrange to meet him tonight. Mikhail will drive you. You're having me followed? Though I don't know why I was surprised. Not followed. Protected. He stood, signaling the end of our conversation. There are those who would use you to get to me. I'm just your translator, I said, rising as well. Victor moved around the desk until he stood directly before me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. You are far more than that, Alina Foster. You simply haven't accepted it yet. His proximity was overwhelming. The heat of him, the subtle scent of his cologne, the intensity of his gaze. For a wild moment, I thought he might kiss me. Part of me wanted him to, wanted to discover if his mouth would be as demanding as his personality, if his touch would ignite the fire his looks promised. Instead, he stepped back, professional mask firmly in place once more. Call Mercer. Report back to me afterward. I nodded stiffly and turned to leave. And Alina? His voice stopped me at the door. Remember where your loyalties lie. I looked back at him, at this man who had upended my life in less than 48 hours. Do you really think loyalty can be bought, Victor? Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, or respect. Everything has a price. You, of all people, should understand that by now. I left without responding, the truth of his words burning like acid in my throat, because he was right. I had sold my skills, my time, my integrity, all for my grandmother's medical care. What did that say about me? What else might I be willing to sacrifice? James answered on the third ring, his voice wary when I identified myself. Alina, this is unexpected. I know. I'm sorry to call out of the blue. I forced warmth into my tone. I was thinking about you recently. Wondered if you might want to grab a drink, catch up. A pause. The last time we spoke, you said, and I quote, I hope I never see your lying face again. I winced. Our breakup had been ugly. I'd discovered he'd been using me for information about the Russian community for an article, all while dating another woman on the side. I know. I was angry. But it's been months, and, well, life's too short for grudges, right? Another longer pause. One drink, he finally said. Miller's Pub, 7 p.m. See you then. I hung up, feeling sick with self-loathing. I was about to do to James exactly what he'd done to me, use him for information, betray his trust. The symmetry was nauseating, but what choice did I have? Victor had made the stakes clear. My grandmother's health, her life, depended on my cooperation. As I prepared for the meeting with James, selecting a casual outfit that would make me seem harmless, nostalgic, I couldn't help but wonder. How long before Victor asked me to do something worse? And would I have the strength to refuse when that day came? Because despite everything, the manipulation, the threats, the control, some traitorous part of me still responded to him. Still thrilled at his approval, still yearned for his touch. And that terrified me more than any threat he could make. I was falling under the spell of the Wolf of Chicago, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be saved. Miller's Pub was crowded with the after-work crowd, the air thick with the smell of beer and fried food. I spotted James immediately at a corner table. His sandy hair slightly longer than when we'd dated, dark circles under his blue eyes suggesting late nights chasing stories. Mikhail had dropped me off with instructions to wait across the street. 2 hours, he'd said. No longer. The implication was clear. Victor would be watching, even if not physically present. James stood as I approached, his expression guarded. Alina. No hug, no kiss on the cheek. Just my name, spoken with careful neutrality. James. Thanks for meeting me. I slid into the booth across from him, shrugging off my coat. You look good. A lie. He looked exhausted, worn thin by whatever story he was chasing. Victor's story, I reminded myself with a pang of guilt. You too. His eyes traced my face, lingering on the pearl earrings I'd forgotten to remove after work. Nice earrings. New? A gift. I removed them quickly, tucking them into my purse. How have you been? Busy. You know how it is with the paper, always chasing the next deadline. He signaled a waitress. What are you drinking? Vodka tonic. I needed something stronger than my usual wine. He ordered our drinks, then turned back to me, eyes narrowing slightly. So, why the sudden desire to reconnect? Last I checked, you hated my guts. Direct, as always. It was what had attracted me to him initially. His refusal to play games, to sugarcoat truth. Until I discovered his directness was selective, applied only when it suited him. I ran into Melanie Johnson last week. A lie I'd prepared carefully. Melanie was a mutual friend from Northwestern, someone I knew he still kept in touch with. She mentioned you were working on a big story. It made me realize how petty our fight seems now. We were good together, before I used you for information and cheated on you. His smile was self-deprecating. Let's not rewrite history, Alina. We both know what I did. Our drinks arrived, sparing me from responding immediately. I took a long sip, the vodka burning pleasantly down my throat. Fair enough. I'm not suggesting we get back together. Just maybe we can be friendly. Friendly? He considered this, studying me over the rim of his whiskey glass. So, what are you up to these days? Still at that fancy restaurant? No, actually, I've moved on. Using my degree finally. I traced the condensation on my glass. I'm working as a translator and personal assistant for a business executive. Anyone I know. The question seemed casual, but his reporter's instincts were visibly engaged now, his eyes sharp. Viktor Sokolov. I dropped the name deliberately, watching his reaction. He stilled, his glass halfway to his lips. Sokolov. He set the drink down carefully. How long have you been working for him? Just a few days. It happened suddenly. That, at least, was true. The pay is amazing, and he's arranged specialist care for my grandmother. James leaned forward, lowering his voice. Alina, do you have any idea who Sokolov really is? A successful businessman with diverse interests. I recited the public line. Nightclubs, real estate, import-export. That's the sanitized version. His eyes darted around the pub, checking for eavesdroppers. Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but my current investigation, it's about him, about what he really imports, and it's not just vodka and caviar. My heart rate quickened. This was exactly what Victor wanted to know. What do you mean? James hesitated, internal conflict clear on his face. Finally, he sighed. You need to understand what you've gotten yourself into. Sokolov runs the most sophisticated smuggling operation in the Midwest. Drugs, weapons, even people sometimes. His legitimate businesses are just a front. That's a serious accusation. I kept my voice neutral, fighting to hide my reaction. Do you have proof? Getting there. I have sources inside his operation, documentation of shipments that don't match manifest records. His eyes narrowed. Why? Has he asked you to translate anything suspicious? No, nothing like that. I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. Mostly business correspondence, meeting notes, boring stuff. Keep it that way. James reached across the table, grabbing my hand with unexpected intensity. Listen to me, Alina. You need to get out now, before you're in too deep. Sokolov doesn't hire people without a purpose. If he brought you in, he wants something specific from you. The concern in his voice seemed genuine, making my betrayal burn even hotter in my chest. I can handle myself. No, you can't. Not with men like him. James squeezed my hand. I've been investigating Sokolov for 8 months. Do you know what happens to people who cross him? They disappear, Alina, or they have accidents. Just last month, one of his former associates was found in the river with his throat cut. A chill ran through me. Maybe that was unrelated. It wasn't. James released my hand, running his fingers through his hair in frustration. Look, I know we ended badly. I was an asshole. But I don't want to see you hurt. Whatever he's paying you, whatever he's promised for your grandmother, it's not worth it. I need this job, James. I hated how weak I sounded. My grandmother's cancer. The treatments are experimental. No other doctor will take her case. And you don't find it convenient that Sokolov is offering exactly what you desperately need? His voice softened. That's how men like him operate. They find your vulnerability and exploit it. Once he has his hooks in you, you'll never be free. Victor's words echoed in my mind. Very protective of what's mine. A shiver ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the pub's chilly air conditioning. When is your article coming out? I asked, trying to steer the conversation back to what Victor wanted to know. Soon. Few weeks, maybe less. I'm meeting a key source tomorrow night. He leaned forward again. Alina, promise me you'll be careful. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything that feels wrong. And if you see or hear anything suspicious, call me, day or night. I nodded, guilt churning in my stomach. I promise. We finished our drinks with forced small talk about mutual friends, the approaching holidays, neutral topics that didn't touch on Victor or James's investigation. When we parted outside the pub, he hugged me briefly. I mean it, Alina. Be careful. And call me if you need anything. I will, I lied, watching him walk away, knowing I'd just betrayed him all over again. Mikhail was waiting exactly where he'd left me, the black Escalade idling at the curb. He didn't ask questions as I slid into the back seat, just pulled smoothly into traffic. Mr. Sokolov wants to see you, he said, after several minutes of silence. We're going to his residence. It was nearly 9 p.m. when we arrived at Victor's mansion. The night was clear but bitterly cold. The lake a vast darkness beyond the house's glowing windows. Mikhail led me directly to Victor's study, where he sat behind his desk reviewing documents. Alina. He looked up as I entered, dismissing Mikhail with a nod. How was your reunion with Mr. Mercer? I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. Illuminating. Tell me everything. And so I did, recounting James's warnings, his timeline for the article, the meeting with his source scheduled for tomorrow night. With each word, I felt myself sinking deeper into Victor's world, becoming more complicit in whatever he might do with this information. Victor listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he poured 2 glasses of vodka from a crystal decanter, handing one to me before taking his seat again. You did well, he said finally. Mercer trusts you, despite your history. That's useful. He was trying to protect me from you. I took a large swallow of vodka, welcoming its numbing effect. He said people who cross you have accidents. Victor's expression darkened. Mercer should be more careful about making accusations without proof. Is he wrong? I met his gaze steadily. Have people who crossed you had accidents? A dangerous silence fell between us. I'd gone too far, pushed too hard. But I needed to know what kind of man I was truly working for, what kind of danger I was in. In my world, Victor said finally, his voice low, disloyalty has consequences. Yes, people who have betrayed me have suffered for it. I make no apologies for protecting what's mine. And am I yours now, expected to betray friends, spy on former lovers, all to protect your interests? He studied me for a long moment, his gray eyes unreadable in the dim light. You made a choice, Alina. When you accepted my offer, you chose sides. There's no middle ground in this. I chose my grandmother's life, I countered. The vodka making me bolder than I should have been. Not to become your spy. Yet here you are, reporting on Mercer's activities. His voice held no judgment, merely stating facts. We all make compromises. The question is whether we can live with them. The truth of his words hit me like a physical blow. I had compromised myself willingly, trading information for my grandmother's care. Where would it end? What else would I be willing to do to keep her alive? I should go, I said, setting down my glass with shaking hands. It's been a long day. Stay. The word was both command and request. It's late, and the weather is turning. There are guest rooms here. I hesitated. Staying in Victor's home felt like crossing yet another boundary, moving closer to the invisible line I'd been approaching since our first meeting. I have nothing with me, I said weakly. No change of clothes, no. That can be arranged. He pressed a button on his desk phone. When Irina answered, he spoke briefly in Russian, too low for me to catch. Minutes later, a young woman I hadn't seen before appeared with a neatly folded stack of clothes. For Ms. Foster, she said, placing them on a side table before disappearing again. Victor gestured toward them. Problem solved. I felt manipulated, maneuvered into staying, yet part of me was relieved not to return to the empty apartment. At least here, the nature of my cage was honest, no illusions of freedom or choice. Fine. I stood, gathering the clothes. Where? Irina will show you. He rose as well, moving around the desk to stand before me. Thank you, Alina. For tonight. I know it wasn't easy. For a moment, I glimpsed something genuine in his expression, perhaps even regret. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by his usual mask of control. Irina appeared in the doorway, efficient as always. This way, Miss Foster. The guest room was luxurious, with a 4-poster bed and a bathroom larger than my entire bedroom at the apartment I shared with Zoe and Tasha. The clothes provided were simple but expensive. Silk pajamas, a cashmere robe, even a toothbrush and toiletries arranged neatly in the bathroom. Everything anticipated, every need met. The perfect golden cage. I showered, letting hot water sluice away the day's tensions, trying not to think about James's warnings or Victor's veiled threats. When I emerged, wrapped in the plush robe, I was startled to find Victor himself waiting in a sitting area adjacent to the bedroom. I thought you might like tea before bed. He gestured to a silver service on the coffee table. My mother's recipe again. I clutched the robe tighter around myself, acutely aware of my vulnerability. Thank you, but I'm very tired. He ignored my implicit dismissal, pouring tea into 2 delicate cups. My sister had trouble sleeping too, especially after our parents died. Tea was the only thing that helped. The casual mention of his sister, the second personal detail he'd shared, caught me off guard. What was her name? I asked, sitting across from him despite my better judgment. Natasha. His expression softened slightly. She was 3 years younger than me, brilliant, headstrong, much like you. What happened to her? I accepted the tea he offered, the familiar scent of black tea and raspberry jam, strangely comforting. Victor's jaw tightened. She got involved with the wrong people. Trusted someone she shouldn't have. He looked away, toward the windows where snow had begun to fall in gentle flurries. She paid for that mistake with her life. The raw pain in his voice was unmistakable, transforming him momentarily from the untouchable crime lord to simply a man grieving his sister. I wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but I remained frozen, unsure of the boundaries between us. I'm sorry, I said instead, the words inadequate but sincere. It was a long time ago. He took a sip of his tea, composure returning. After she died, I swore I would never again lose someone under my protection. That's why I'm vigilant about threats, why I require absolute loyalty. Is that what I am? Someone under your protection? His gaze locked with mine, intense and uncompromising. Yes, whether you want to be or not. I never asked for that, yet here you are. He set down his cup, leaning forward slightly. You could have walked away that first night, Alina. Refused my offer, taken your chances, but you didn't. Something in you recognized something in me. Desperation, I countered. Not recognition. Is that what you tell yourself? His voice dropped lower, more intimate. That you're here only for your grandmother's treatment? That you feel nothing when we're together like this? Heat bloomed in my chest, spreading upward to my face. What I feel or don't feel is irrelevant. You're my employer. We both know it's more than that. He reached across the space between us, his fingers brushing a damp strand of hair from my face. The contact, though fleeting, sent electricity racing along my skin. From the moment you spoke Russian in that restaurant, something changed. For both of us. I should have pulled away, should have maintained the professional distance I'd been clinging to. Instead, I found myself leaning subtly into his touch, my body betraying me as it had from the beginning. This is a bad idea, I whispered. Undoubtedly. His hand cupped my cheek now, thumb tracing my lower lip in a gesture both tender and possessive. I am not a good man, Alina. I've done things that would horrify you. I will continue to do them. That's the world I live in. Then why am I here? Really? His eyes darkened, pupils dilating. Because when I look at you, I see a light I thought had gone out of my life forever. Because despite everything, the danger, the complications, the risk to my organization, I can't seem to stay away from you. The confession hung between us, raw and unexpected. Viktor Sokolov, the Wolf of Chicago, admitting vulnerability. It should have humanized him, made him less frightening. Instead, it made him more dangerous, because now the attraction I'd been fighting wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, a recognition of shared loneliness, of kindred spirits trapped in different cages. Victor, I began, unsure what I even wanted to say. But before I could continue, his phone vibrated sharply. He checked it, his expression instantly hardening. I have to go. He stood, professional mask firmly back in place. Business that can't wait. Sleep well, Alina. We'll talk in the morning. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with cooling tea and confused emotions. I retreated to the massive bed, burying myself beneath luxurious covers, but sleep remained elusive. My mind replayed every moment with Victor, the threats and the tenderness, the danger and the protection, the manipulation and the honesty. I was falling for a man who lived in shadows, who held my grandmother's life in his hands, who admitted freely to having enemies killed. What did that say about me? Morning came too quickly, pale winter sunlight filtering through heavy curtains. I dressed in the clothes provided, a cashmere sweater and tailored slacks that fit perfectly, raising questions about how Victor knew my exact size. Irina was waiting when I emerged from the guest room. Mr. Sokolov had to leave early on business. He asked me to inform you that your grandmother's appointment with Dr. Abramson is at noon. Mikhail will take you there. Thank you. Relief and disappointment warred within me. Relief at not having to face Victor after last night's charged encounter. Disappointment for exactly the same reason. The drive to Northwestern Memorial passed in tense silence. My grandmother was already in the waiting room when I arrived, her thin frame drowning in a coat too large for her diminished body. She brightened when she saw me, rising shakily to embrace me. Alinochka? She murmured in Russian, her voice weaker than it had been just days ago on the phone. You look different. Do I? I helped her back to her seat, conscious of Mikhail standing discreetly by the entrance. How? She studied me with the piercing gaze that had never failed to see through my childhood fibs. You carry yourself differently, like someone who has made a dangerous bargain and is only beginning to understand the cost. Before I could respond, a nurse called my grandmother's name. Dr. Abramson proved to be everything Victor had promised. Brilliant, compassionate, and armed with treatment options no regular oncologist had mentioned. As he outlined a new protocol involving immunotherapy and targeted radiation, I felt a surge of gratitude toward Victor that complicated my already confused feelings. After the appointment, as we waited for the pharmacy to fill new prescriptions, my grandmother took my hand. This doctor, these new treatments, they are very expensive, Alinochka. Our insurance would never cover them. Don't worry about that, I assured her. It's taken care of. By your new employer. It wasn't a question. This man, Sokolov, what does he want from you in return? I couldn't lie to her, not completely. My skills as a translator, my loyalty, my discretion. She nodded slowly. And nothing more? Men like him, they always want more. The memory of Victor's touch, his confession last night, heated my skin. It's complicated, I admitted. Be careful with your heart, Alinochka. She squeezed my hand weakly. Men of power, they love differently, possessively. They do not share, they do not compromise. They consume. I know what I'm doing, I said, with more confidence than I felt. Do you? She looked past me, to where Mikhail stood watching us. You are being followed already, watched. The cage may be golden, but it is still a cage. The pharmacist called my name, sparing me from responding. As I collected the medications, my phone buzzed with a text from Victor. How is your grandmother? Is Abramson taking good care of her? I stared at the screen, struck by the domesticity of the inquiry, as if we were any normal couple, as if he hadn't threatened and manipulated me into betraying a former friend just last night. Yes, thank you. New treatment plan looks promising. I hesitated, then added, She likes him. The response came immediately. I'm glad. Come to the office when you're done. We need to discuss Mercer's source. And just like that, the brief illusion of normalcy shattered. I was still Viktor Sokolov's employee, his asset, his possession. The appointment with Dr. Abramson hadn't been generosity, it had been investment, insurance of my continued cooperation. As I helped my grandmother to the car Victor had arranged to take her home, I wondered how much deeper I would sink into his world before I lost myself completely. And more disturbing still, I wondered if I would even care when it happened. Because despite everything, the danger, the moral compromises, the golden cage closing around me, a part of me was thriving under Victor's attention, blooming like a flower turned toward dangerous but intoxicating light. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. Someone who made deals with devils and called it survival. Someone who felt alive only in the presence of a man who dealt in death. And the most frightening part, I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to who I was before. Victor's office was bustling when I arrived. Men in suits moved purposefully between rooms, speaking in hushed tones. Irina intercepted me in the lobby, her expression tighter than usual. Mr. Sokolov is in a meeting. He asked that you wait in his office. She guided me through the controlled chaos, stopping at Victor's door. There have been complications. Be prepared. The warning sent a chill down my spine. What kind of complications? She merely shook her head, gesturing me inside before disappearing down the corridor. Victor's office was empty, affording me a rare moment alone in his space. Unlike his home study with its artwork and personal touches, this room was purely functional. A large desk with multiple monitors, a conference table, and walls covered in maps showing shipping routes across the globe. The only personal item was a small silver frame on his desk, turned away from visitors. Curiosity overcame caution. I crossed to the desk and turned the frame to reveal a faded photograph of two children. A boy of perhaps 12 with a protective arm around a younger girl. Both had Victor's gray eyes and strong features. Victor and Natasha, before tragedy, rewrote their story. She was 9 when that was taken. I startled, nearly dropping the frame. Victor stood in the doorway, watching me with an unreadable expression. He looked different today, tension radiating from him, a barely contained energy that made the air feel electrically charged. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. It's fine. He closed the door, moving to stand beside me. That summer at our grandparents' dacha outside Moscow, the last truly carefree time we had, I carefully replaced the frame. Your meeting ended early? It never began. He gestured for me to sit, taking the chair beside me rather than retreating behind his desk. The proximity was deliberately intimate, a continuation of last night's shift in our dynamic. We have a problem, Alina. Mercer's source was found dead 2 hours ago. My blood turned to ice. What? How? Shot twice in the head, left in an alley behind a nightclub in Wicker Park. Victor's expression remained neutral, but his eyes watched me intently, gauging my reaction. A nightclub I own. You think I had something to do with this? The accusation, unspoken but clear, made me recoil. I only told you about the meeting. I never said who the source was. I don't even know who it was. I know. His voice softened slightly. The timing is unfortunate. Mercer will believe I discovered his source through you. that I had the man killed to protect my interests. Did you? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Something dangerous flashed in Victor's eyes. No, this wasn't my order. Someone is trying to frame me or trying to send me a message. What kind of message? That I have a leak. That I'm vulnerable. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Someone close to me is working against me, Alina. Someone with access to my schedule, my business dealings. The implication was clear. You think it's me? He turned, his expression softening fractionally. No. If I thought it was you, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The cold certainty in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. This was the Victor that James had warned me about. The man capable of making enemies disappear. Then who? I asked. I have suspicions. He returned to his seat, leaning forward intently. But I need to be certain, which is why I need your help. My help? How? Mercer trusts you. He'll contact you when he learns about his source. I need you to meet with him. Find out what he knows, what evidence he still has. I stood, anger overriding fear. No, I won't do that again. Using me to spy on James once was bad enough. I won't. Your grandmother's new treatment begins tomorrow. Victor's voice was soft, but the threat unmistakable. Experimental protocols can be unpredictable. Side effects, complications. My hands curled into fists. You're threatening her again? After everything I've already done for you? I'm ensuring your cooperation in a matter that threatens everything I've built. He rose as well, towering over me. This isn't just business, Alina. This is survival. If Mercer publishes his article with evidence of my operations, it won't just mean financial loss. It will mean prison. Or death. If my competitors reach me first. That's not my problem. It became your problem the moment you took my offer. His hand shot out, gripping my arm with controlled strength. The moment you chose to enter my world. We stood frozen, locked in a silent battle of wills, his fingers burning through the thin fabric of my sleeve. I should have been terrified, should have been planning my escape. Instead, some traitorous part of me responded to his intensity, to the raw power emanating from him. Let me go, I whispered. To my surprise, he did, his hand falling away as he took a deliberate step back. I'm not the monster Mercer paints me to be, Alina. Yes, I've done things the law would condemn. I've hurt people who betrayed me, but everything I've built, everything I am, comes from necessity, from survival. Survival doesn't justify everything, Victor. It does when the alternative is watching everyone you love die. His voice hardened. I was 17 when the Bratva killed my parents for refusing to pay protection money. 19 when they came for Natasha after I began building my own organization to fight back. I know exactly what's at stake here. The raw pain in his confession silenced me. For the first time, I glimpsed the full picture of what had shaped Viktor Sokolov. Not just ambition or greed, but trauma, loss, and the brutal education of someone who'd learned early that power was the only protection in a violent world. I'm sorry about your family, I said finally. Truly. But that doesn't give you the right to use my grandmother as leverage. No, it doesn't. He surprised me with the admission. But I will use whatever means necessary to protect what remains of mine. My organization. My people. He paused, his gaze intensifying. You. I'm not yours to protect, I insisted, though the words sounded hollow even to my own ears. Aren't you? He stepped closer again, invading my space with his heat, his scent, his presence. Tell me you feel nothing, Alina. Tell me you could walk away from this. From me, and never look back. I couldn't. The truth was written in my racing pulse, my shallow breathing, the heat blooming across my skin wherever he came too close. Despite everything, the manipulation, the threats, the moral compromise, I was drawn to him like a moth to flame, knowing I might be consumed but unable to resist the pull. This is insanity, I whispered. Perhaps. His hand rose to my face, fingertips tracing my cheekbone with surprising gentleness. But sanity is overrated. My phone rang, shattering the moment. I stepped back, fumbling for it in my purse, heart still pounding from Victor's proximity. The screen showed James's number. Victor's eyes narrowed. "Mercer, answer it, on speaker." I hesitated, then obeyed, pressing the speakerphone button. "Hello?" "Alina." James's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "Have you seen the news?" "No, I've been at the hospital with my grandmother." "What's happened?" "Anton Kuznetsov is dead, shot execution style behind the frost room." His voice cracked slightly. "He was my source, Alina, the one I told you about yesterday." I glanced at Victor, whose expression had hardened at the name. "James, I'm so sorry. I need to see you. Now. It's not safe to talk on the phone." The urgency in his voice was unmistakable. "Meet me at the university library in 30 minutes. Second floor, linguistics section. Come alone." The call ended before I could respond. Victor was already moving, pressing a button on his desk phone. "Mikhail, I need surveillance on Northwestern University Library. Immediately." "You're not sending me there," I protested. "No, I'm going with you." He opened a cabinet, removing what I recognized with a shock as a handgun. "Kuznetsov was my head of security until 3 months ago. If he was Mercer's source, the threat is far more serious than I thought." "I'm not getting in the middle of a shootout, Victor." He tucked the gun into a shoulder holster beneath his suit jacket. "There won't be one. We'll observe from a distance. I need to know what Mercer knows, what evidence Kuznetsov gave him before he died." "And then what? You'll have James killed too?" The question was out before I could stop it. Victor stilled, his eyes meeting mine with chilling intensity. "Is that what you think of me? That I solve all my problems with bullets?" "I don't know what to think anymore," I admitted. "I'm in so deep I can't see daylight." Something softened in his expression. "I don't want Mercer dead, Alina. I want him neutralized. There are other ways to accomplish that." Before I could respond, Mikhail appeared at the door, car keys in hand. "The car is ready, sir." The ride to Northwestern passed in tense silence. Victor sat beside me in the back of the Escalade, close enough that our shoulders occasionally touched when the car turned. Each contact sent electricity through me, a physical awareness I couldn't suppress despite the dangerous situation we were heading into. "Stay in the car," Victor instructed as we pulled up a block from the library. "Mikhail will keep you safe." "No." I caught his arm as he prepared to exit. "I'm coming with you." "It's too dangerous. James asked for me. If he sees you instead, he'll run." I held his gaze steadily. "Let me talk to him. I'll find out what he knows." Victor studied me for a long moment. "You'd do that willingly? Help me against your former lover?" The question carried weight beyond the immediate situation. It was a test of where my loyalties truly lay. "I'm already complicit," I said finally. Might as well see it through. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "Very well. But we do this my way. You wear a wire so I can hear everything. I'll be close enough to intervene if necessary." 15 minutes later, wired with a tiny transmitter hidden beneath my sweater, I climbed the stairs to the library's second floor. The linguistics section was deserted, rows of bookshelves creating a maze of secluded study nooks and hidden corners. Alina. James materialized from between shelves, grabbing my arm and pulling me into a small study alcove. "Thank God you came." "James, what's going on? You're scaring me." The fear in my voice wasn't entirely feigned. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes wild with a combination of grief and adrenaline. "Anton is dead. Shot twice in the head. Professional hit. He was supposed to give me the final evidence I needed. Shipping manifests, bank transfers, everything proving Sokolov's operation. I don't understand what this has to do with me," I said, conscious of Victor listening to every word. James grabbed my shoulders. "It has everything to do with you. You're in danger, Alina. Sokolov must know you talked to me. He'll assume you leaked information." "No, he wouldn't," I began, only to be cut off. "Listen to me." James's voice rose, drawing a sharp shh from a nearby student. He lowered his voice to an urgent whisper. "I can protect you. I have contacts at the FBI. They can put you in witness protection, but we have to move now before Sokolov realizes you're gone." "Witness protection?" I stared at him. "James, I haven't witnessed anything. I've only worked for him a few days." That's not true, is it? His eyes narrowed. You've seen things, heard things. That's why you reached out to me yesterday. You realized what kind of man you're really working for. The trap was so obvious, I almost laughed. James wasn't concerned for my safety. He was fishing for information, trying to turn me into his new source. I reached out because I thought we could be friends again. I said carefully. Nothing more. Bullshit. His grip on my shoulders tightened painfully. You know something, Alina. Something important enough that Sokolov had Anton killed to protect it. You're hurting me. I tried to pull away, suddenly truly afraid of the desperation in James's eyes. Tell me what you know. His voice rose again, drawing stares from across the room. What did you see? What did you translate for him? Names? Shipping routes? Nothing. I told you, I just started working for him. Liar. He shoved me against the bookshelf, sending volumes of linguistic theory tumbling to the floor. Anton is dead because of you, because you warned Sokolov about our meeting. Cold fear washed over me as I realized James was unraveling, his judgment clouded by grief and obsession. Where was Victor? Could he hear what was happening? James, please, you're not thinking clearly. I should have known. He spat, his face contorted with anger. Once a Russian sympathizer, always a Russian sympathizer. Is that it? Or did Sokolov find another way to buy your loyalty? Is he fucking you, Alina? Is that your price? The crude accusation hit like a slap. I shoved him hard, creating space between us. You need help, James. This isn't you. This is exactly me. He reached into his jacket, and my blood froze when I glimpsed metal. The journalist who's finally going to bring down Viktor Sokolov with or without your help. Is that a gun? I whispered, backing away slowly. Insurance. His eyes darted around the library. Come with me now, Alina. Last chance. I'm not going anywhere with you. His expression hardened. Then you're choosing him. You're choosing a murderer over justice. I'm choosing to walk away from a man with a gun who's clearly not in his right mind, I countered, edging toward the main aisle between shelves. You're not walking away from this. James raised the gun slightly, keeping it partially concealed by his jacket. Not until you tell me what you know about Sokolov's operation. Real terror gripped me now. James was unhinged, dangerous, and I was trapped in a deserted corner of the library with him. I don't know anything, I insisted, trying to keep my voice steady. I translate documents, James, business correspondence. That's all. Stop lying. He grabbed my arm again, the gun now pressed against my side. We're going somewhere private to continue this conversation. Move. I wouldn't do that, Mr. Mercer. Victor's voice, cold and controlled, came from behind us. James spun, keeping me partially in front of him, the gun now fully visible. Sokolov. James's voice dripped with hatred. Come to silence another loose end? Victor stood at the end of the aisle, hands casually in his pockets, looking for all the world like a businessman who'd wandered into the wrong section. Only the deadly focus in his eyes revealed the predator beneath. I came to ensure Ms. Foster's safety, he said calmly. Something you seem to be jeopardizing with that weapon. Stay back. James tightened his grip on my arm. I'll shoot her if you come closer. No, you won't. Victor took a step forward, utterly unfazed by the threat. You're a journalist, Mercer, not a killer. You don't know what I'm capable of, James hissed. You killed my source, my friend. I did no such thing. Another step forward. Anton Kuznetsov was murdered by the same person who's been feeding you information all along. You're being played, Mercer. Used as a pawn in someone else's game. Confusion flickered across James's face. What are you talking about? Irina Petrova, my executive manager. She's been working with the Boitsov family from St. Petersburg for months, undermining my operation from within. Victor's voice remained conversational, as if discussing the weather. She killed Kuznetsov when she discovered he was going to expose her to you. That's a convenient story, James scoffed, but doubt had crept into his expression. Check Kuznetsov's phone records. The last call he made was to my private line, less than an hour before he died. Victor was close enough now that I could see the tension in his shoulders, the calculated readiness beneath his relaxed demeanor. He left me a voicemail warning about Irina. I have it recorded if you'd like to hear it. James's grip on my arm loosened slightly. Why would you tell me this? Because unlike you, I understand the value of truth. Victor's eyes met mine briefly, a silent message passing between us. And because I'd rather not see an innocent woman caught in the crossfire of a war she didn't choose, in that split second of distraction, I drove my elbow hard into James's ribs. He gasped, his grip loosening further. I twisted away, ducking beneath his arm as Victor lunged forward, disarming him with a swift, practiced movement that spoke of military training. James stumbled backward, the gun now in Victor's hand. You're making a mistake, Alina, he gasped, clutching his side where I'd struck him. He'll destroy you. The only mistake was trusting you, I replied, moving to stand beside Victor, twice. Victor tucked the gun into his jacket, his other hand coming to rest possessively at the small of my back. I suggest you walk away, Mr. Mercer. Find another story. This one's already cost one life. Don't let it cost another. The threat hung in the air between them, clear and unmistakable. James looked from Victor to me, betrayal and resignation warring in his expression. This isn't over, he said finally, backing away. The truth always comes out eventually. Indeed it does. Victor's voice hardened. Remember that when you consider your next move. We watched in silence as James retreated, disappearing down the library stairs. Only when he was gone did Victor turn to me, his hand gently tilting my chin to examine my face. Are you hurt? No. I was trembling, the adrenaline of the confrontation beginning to ebb. Was that true? About Irina? Yes. His jaw tightened. She's been dealt with. I didn't ask what that meant, didn't want to know. And Kuznetsov really called to warn you? Yes. Too late to save himself, but in time to save my organization. His thumb traced my lower lip, a gesture becoming familiar. And you. Your loyalty today won't be forgotten, Alina. It wasn't loyalty to you, I said quietly. It was self-preservation. James was out of control, perhaps. A slight smile curved his lips, but you chose a side nonetheless, my side. He was right. In that moment in the library, faced with James's unraveling sanity and Victor's controlled strength, I had made my choice, had aligned myself with the devil I knew, rather than the friend I no longer recognized. What happens now? I asked, as Victor guided me toward the exit, his hand still at the small of my back. Now we clean up this mess. Ensure Mercer's article never sees publication. He held the door for me, the courtly gesture at odds with the danger still radiating from him. And then, you and I have unfinished business. The way he said it sent heat curling through my body despite the frigid November air. Mikhail was waiting with the car, opening the door as we approached. As I slid into the back seat, Victor's hand on my arm stopped me. One thing should be clear between us, Alina. His voice was low, meant for my ears only. What happened today changes things. You're no longer just my translator. You're part of my inner circle now. My confidant. He paused, searching for the right word. Partner. Partner? I echoed, the word carrying more weight than seemed possible. In all things. His eyes held mine, the meaning unmistakable, if that's what you want. It was a choice. Perhaps the first real one he'd given me since our paths crossed at Nocturne. I could walk away now. He was offering that much, at least. Return to my struggling existence, my grandmother's uncertain care, my dreams deferred, or I could step fully into Viktor Sokolov's world, with all its darkness and danger, and unexpected moments of light. Become the woman at the wolf's side, both his weakness and his strength. I want it, I said finally, the truth releasing something tight in my chest. God help me. I want it all. His smile then, genuine, transformative, made him look younger, almost boyish. He joined me in the back seat, closing the door on the outside world. As the car pulled away from the curb, Victor reached for my hand, our fingers intertwining in silent understanding. Your grandmother will be pleased, he said unexpectedly. She called me this morning after her appointment. I stared at him. She called you? How? I gave her my number when I arranged her care. His thumb traced circles on my palm. She's quite formidable, your babushka. Threatened me with creative Russian curses if I hurt you. Laughter bubbled up, surprising us both. That sounds like her. She also said something about Russian men making terrible husbands but passionate lovers. His eyes danced with amusement. I assured her I'd prove the first part wrong. The implication stole my breath. Victor. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. He lifted our joined hands, pressing his lips to my knuckles. When you're ready. When you understand completely what it means to be mine. The possessiveness that had once frightened me now sent a different kind of shiver through my body. Because I was beginning to understand that belonging to Viktor Sokolov meant more than ownership. It meant protection, passion, a place in a world few ever glimpsed from the inside. And what about you? I asked, emboldened by his rare openness. Are you mine as well? His expression sobered, gray eyes searching mine. I have been since you spoke Russian in that restaurant, Alina Foster. You just didn't know it yet. The confession hung between us, transforming the air in the car, making it thick with possibility. When his lips finally met mine, it felt inevitable. The culmination of a dance that had begun the moment our eyes first locked across that private dining room. His kiss was everything I'd imagined and nothing like I'd expected. Controlled yet hungry, commanding yet surprisingly tender. His hand cradled my face as if I were something precious, even as his mouth claimed mine with unmistakable possession. When we broke apart, both breathless, the world outside seemed to have changed. Sharper, brighter, more vivid. Or perhaps it was simply that I had changed, stepped across a threshold into a life I'd never imagined for myself. Where are we going? I asked, suddenly aware the car was heading away from both the office and my apartment, the airport. Victor's arm curled around me, drawing me against his side. I have business in St. Petersburg that can't wait. The Boitsov family needs to understand the consequences of their interference. You want me to come with you? To Russia? The speed of this new reality made my head spin. I want you by my side, Alina, in Chicago, in Russia, wherever business takes me. His voice softened slightly, and I thought you might like to see your grandmother's homeland. Perhaps visit her old neighborhood. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, remembering this detail about my grandmother's past, wanting to connect me to my heritage, touched me unexpectedly. It was these glimpses of the man beneath the power that had drawn me to him from the beginning. Yes, I said simply. I'd like that. As the Chicago skyline receded behind us, I leaned into Victor's embrace, no longer fighting the current that had swept me into his world. I had made my choice, crossed my own line in the sand. Whatever came next, danger, passion, power, I would face it at the wolf's side, not as his possession, but as his equal, his partner. His light in the darkness he navigated with such deadly grace. And if that meant embracing parts of myself I'd never acknowledged, the hunger for power, the thrill of danger, the willingness to bend moral boundaries, then so be it. We were all shaped by our choices, by the compromises we made to protect what mattered most. Victor had chosen me, and against all reason, against all warnings, I had chosen him. The rest was yet to be written, our story just beginning. But one thing was certain as we sped toward the future awaiting us. I had spoken Russian before the Mafia boss, and in doing so, I had changed both our destinies forever.